Welcome back, guys. Happy Sunday. Today we're going to talk about propaganda, and we're going to talk about two laws that are getting thrown around a lot, and we're going to read them and hopefully try and explain some of this propaganda floating around. So while we read these, I'm going to show you tons of pictures I've taken in Portland, and before that, let's look at a video. So I went to Whole Foods yesterday, thanks to I Know What's Up's gift card, and we were accosted. I mean, straight up accosted. Like, an employee there charged us from across the store and caused a huge scene. Didn't even introduce himself, got right up in our faces with his Wu-Flu mask and said, "I just had spinal surgery. If I can wear a mask during physical therapy, blah, 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 put the mask on." And he had two little Wu-Flu diapers in his hand. And my brother doesn't play like that. My brother does not play like that. So my brother was like, loudly, both of us loudly told him our thoughts, and of course all the Whole Foods sheep started gathering around us, and they're just, "Put the mask on, just put the mask on," and we made each and every one of them look like complete idiots. And not only that, we shut everybody up, we shut it all down, and we stood in line for 30 minutes making fun of all of these sheep, and nobody did anything. So I Know What's Up, your gift card probably woke up, I'm going to say 20 people. It was amazing. I wish I recorded it, but it happened spur of the moment. We were confronted by a total of 4 people, 2 employees, 2 strangers. We shut them all down. It was great. One of the best days of my life. And as we left, look what we drove by, you guys. Look, this is just disgusting. Look at this. Wu-Flu bubbles. Who's making these? Where are these coming from? It's just outrageous, dude. It's so embarrassing. I wouldn't be caught dead sitting in one of those. And I'm just filming with the biggest smile on my face, and these people just don't get it. They just don't get it. They're gonna get what they deserve. So, speaking of propaganda, I mean, I have endless archives of this stuff, guys. Like, look at this one. It's unbelievable. Where is it coming from? Who's paying for it, and why is this being allowed to happen when the science doesn't back it up, right? Well, my thoughts are that our tax dollars are paying for all of it. Our tax dollars are definitely paying for this. This was not from the art college. This is definitely paid for with our tax money. And of course, you see the all-seeing eye right there, right? The one eye. An STS, this acronym keeps coming up. STS is often referred to as service to self or service to Satan. And all of their invocations lately have been STS. Stop the spread. Stop the steal, right? Both sides are doing it. They are obsessed with this. They are obsessed with acronyms, numerology, symbolism. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Oh, I hate it. So yeah. We're going to read through first the 1948 one, which is on the right side of your screen. And before we read, check this out. They're getting pretty rowdy in the UK right now. Let's listen in. These are Indians protesting at the Indian embassy. Not sure what about. Probably the same stuff we are. Wow, guys, look at their signs. Check this out. Hold on. Farming law equals death warrant for Punjab. I'm not sure what Punjab means. It's an Indian word, but I follow a guy named Ice Age Farmer on YouTube. He's fantastic, and something nobody's talking about is the systematic destruction of the food system. Like, it's a subtle agenda that they're pushing at the same time, but they are going to get rid of farmed food. I'm telling you, everything is going to be lab grown. Why do you think they're pushing these Impossible Burgers at Burger King, at Taco Bell, at Wendy's, right? Lab grown meat is the future, and they're pushing this agenda subtly and quietly underneath everything that's going on. Follow Ice Age Farmer. The amount of catastrophic farm explosions and like laws they're passing all over the world. In Scandinavia, one of those countries, they just killed 1 million minks. They killed every single farmed mink in the country. Minks are used for oil. Minks are used for clothing. They killed every single one in the country, can't remember which country, because of Wu flu. They literally slaughtered 1 million minks and threw them out. So check out Ice Age Farmer, because he's on top of all this stuff. It looks like they're protesting over something related to farming. Good for them, dude. We're done. We're done. Wow. They are pissed. If you don't know, yesterday, Paris was just leveled on fire. It was awesome. The police were completely outnumbered, and they got owned. Absolutely owned. And real quick, look at this, guys. Look what's on their hats. Is that familiar to you? Look what's on their hats, right? The checkerboard. Now, if you know what the Five Eyes agreement is, it's an intelligence agreement between 5 countries: New Zealand, Australia, Canada, United States, and the UK. All 5 of those countries use the exact same symbolism and the exact same colors in their policing. And there's a lot more countries across the world that use the same thing. So remember the checkerboard, right? Let's check out the FOP's satanic symbol again. Check this out. What do you see on their seal? Sorry, that was a bad image. But you see it right there, the checkerboard, right? Go look up your New Zealand police. Same thing. These are Masonic symbols that they don't recognize borders. The Masonic Luciferian Baphomet world that we live in doesn't recognize sovereignty or borders. So that's why they all use the same symbols. All right, going back to this. Yeah, they're pissed. Like I was saying yesterday in France, it was crazy. You got to understand, and we're going to talk about this as we read the 1948 Act. Europe has not had any real true freedom since the end of World War II. Your country doesn't get leveled, your continent doesn't get leveled, and then they just somehow were given all their rights and freedoms back. No, they were rebuilt by America. Secret handshakes behind secret closed doors. They have the illusion of freedom, but now in 2020 we see that people in Europe have zero freedom. People in Canada have zero freedom. People in Australia have zero rights. I just watched someone in the middle of the woods get issued a £20,000 fine for refusing to take the PCR test in Australia. So these countries lost their freedom a long time ago during World War II. And like I said, they've had the illusion of freedom, but as you can tell from these videos, they don't have real freedom. They don't have real rights. That's why the whole world is watching us. And that's why it's so heartbreaking to see Americans not doing anything. Because we are the last country that has a teeny bit of freedom, a teeny bit of rights. This is it. This is our window of opportunity. The whole world is watching us. Paris, the pearl of the entire world, yesterday was a war zone. It's unbelievable. And there's their checkerboard police. Why do all police use black, white, red, and blue? It all has to do with Freemasonry. Black, red, and white were the colors of the stones that Solon said were in Atlantis. Yes, you may laugh at that. You may think it's silly, but we are talking about an ancient tradition. It's important to Freemasonry. It's important. And honestly, it's probably real history. Because at this point, everything they tell us is a lie. So if the Freemasons believe in Atlantis, you might want to second guess yourself and say, hey, maybe there's something to it. Now, why do they use red and blue? Well, it represents the 2 paths. The left-hand path, or the blue path, is the path of Lucifer. The right-hand path, or the red path, is the path of Jesus Christ. In the Bible, it says that the Antichrist is blinded in his right eye. That is why all throughout Hollywood, you always see these magazine covers and these photos of these celebrities holding their right eye. These Hollywood people, these police organizations, these fraternities are all followers of the left path. They're followers of Lucifer, in their own words. Now, let's start with the 1948 one, right? So basically, these acts have to do with propaganda, and I guess the mainstream idea is that in 2012, Obama amended this 1948 bill, thus allowing propaganda to be used against the American people. So I'm not saying that's true. We're going to try and find out today, but it would totally make sense. Let's look at some pictures real quick. Let's see, 12.3, this is a recent one. Oh no, it's Masonic stuff. Like this, guys. Like this. This, if, we're going off the mainstream idea of what the Smith-Mundt Act is, the 1948 version of this made stuff like this illegal. This is propaganda. This is meant to influence the minds of the American citizens. And the government has no place in using this, right? I mean, wartime is different. If your country's actually in a real war, sure, propaganda has its role, but this sort of stuff, absolutely not. Look at this. This is paid for with our tax money, and it's based on pseudoscience, right? And it's almost been a full year, and City Hall in Portland is still locked. Yeah. So, maybe we can get some answers as to why this is happening. Let's start with the 1948 one. So we're talking about H.R. 3342. This became Public Law 402, passed on January 27th, 1948. So like I was saying about Europe, this is right after World War II, right? So keep that in mind. All of our brothers across the lake in Europe, their countries were devastated, flattened. America was the superpower, right? Let's make this full screen. And we'll take little breaks and look at examples of propaganda as we read. All right, Chapter 36. To promote the better understanding of the United States among the peoples of the world and to strengthen cooperative international relations. Okay, to promote the better understanding of the United States among the peoples of the world, so to influence the minds of other people. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, Title I, Short Title Objectives and Definitions. Here's the short title of the 1948 Act. The United States Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948. It's not the Smith-Mundt Act. It is the United States Information and Educational Exchange of 1948. They use stuff like Smith-Mundt Act because people are dumb enough to leave it at that, right? They'll just hear about this and then they'll go on the internet and say, Smith-Mundt Act, blah, 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 blah. They're being mocked. They're making fools of themselves, right? So Section 2. The Congress hereby declares that the objectives of this act are to enable the government of the United States to promote a better understanding of the United States in other countries, and to increase mutual understanding between the people of the United States and the people of other countries. Among the means to be used in achieving these objectives are 1. An information service to disseminate abroad information about the United States, its people, and policies promulgated by the Congress, the President, the Secretary of State, and other responsible officials of government having to do with matters affecting foreign affairs. 2. An educational exchange service to cooperate with other nations in A. The interchange of persons, knowledge, and skills. B. The rendering of technical and other services. C. The interchange of developments in the field of education, the arts, and sciences. Let's break it down. So here, I can move myself. So, if we go back to 1, the main goal is to create an information service to disseminate abroad information about the U.S. Now, this would have made sense in regards to like the Marshall Plan, the Truman Doctrine, rebuilding Europe, right? The Cold War was fought with propaganda. So if you go to like 1950s Berlin, where in Germany half of it is controlled by the communists, half of it's controlled by the West, and you've probably heard these stories of people on the German side looking over the Berlin Wall. That would come later. But looking over into the Western side and seeing all sorts of different cars, all sorts of different shaving cream, different clothes, different food, and all of these options, these capitalist options, right? This illusion of freedom that the West was providing through propaganda. Meanwhile, in the East, everybody had the same car, everybody had the same clothes, everybody had the same, basically everything, right? So they would look out their windows and they would see, these young West Germaners drinking Cokes and driving in their, BMWs or their American cars. And it was a PsyOp. It made the Soviet side of Germany say, hey, this is BS. We want to live in the Western world. Very effective. Very effective. So this, bill played a role in the Cold War, I'm sure. And then 2 says an educational exchange service to cooperate with other nations in A, the interchange of persons, knowledge, and skills. What does that remind you of? Well, this would literally be Project Paperclip, right? So this 1948 act was laying the groundwork for what would be the absorption of the upper Nazi echelon, right? Wernher von Braun, guy behind NASA, Nazi, countless other Nazis, right? B, the rendering of technical and other services. C, well, that basically says that American money and interest is going to go over to Europe and rebuild it. C, the interchange of developments in the field of education, the arts, and sciences. And of course, C, just more of that reinforcement of the Rockefeller learning system, the matrix of lies that we're all born into. Okay, section 3, the United Nations. In carrying out the objective of this act, information concerning the participation of the United States in the United Nations, its organizations and functions shall be emphasized. Definitions, section 4. When used in this act, the term secretary means Secretary of State. Okay, we know all that. Title 2. Interchange of persons, knowledge, and skills. Okay, the Secretary of State is authorized to provide for interchanges on a reciprocal basis between the United States and other countries of students, trainees, teachers, guest instructors, professors, and leaders in fields of specialized knowledge or skill. That literally means anybody. Project Paperclip, right? And shall, wherever possible, provide these interchanges by using the services of existing reputable agencies which are successfully engaged in such activity. Okay, the OSS, which would become the CIA. The Secretary may provide for orientation courses and other appropriate services for such persons from other countries upon their arrival in the United States, and for such persons going to other countries from the United States. When any country fails or refuses to cooperate in such program on a basis of reciprocity, the Secretary shall terminate or limit such program. Wow. So if you don't play along, there goes a Marshall Plan, right? There goes us rebuilding your country. So this was tyranny, guys. Our history books are nothing but lies. This was, if you want American money, if you want American infrastructure to rebuild Europe, you're going to do exactly what we say. Of course. Are you kidding me? How many Americans died to save Europe, right? Of course these crazy Freemasonic, Lucifer-worshipping leaders of our country would do this. Okay, with respect to such country, to the extent he deems to be advisable in the interest of the United States, the persons specified in this section shall be admitted as non-immigrant visitors for business under Clause 2 of Section 3 of the Immigration Act of 1924, for such time and under such conditions as may be prescribed by regulations promulgated by the Secretary of State and the Attorney General. Wow. Completely override all immigration law. So as long as the Secretary of State and the Attorney General are cool with it, you come on in. See how they control reality and do whatever they want? It's unbelievable, dude. So if they want to bring Nazi murderers into the country because they might have good ideas about how to make rockets, bring them on in. Nuremberg was a joke, guys. The amount of people that got charged at Nuremberg, it was a joke. And yes, there were other courts and other tribunals that occurred after the war, but the vast majority of Nazi criminals just came to America. We all know that. It's disgusting. A person admitted under this section who fails to maintain the status under which he was admitted, or who fails to depart from the United States at the expiration of the time for which he was admitted, or who engages in activities of a political nature detrimental to the interest of the United States, or in activities not consistent with the security of the United States, shall, upon the warrant of the Attorney General, be taken into custody and promptly deported pursuant to Section 14 of the Immigration Act of 1924. Guys, it's plain as day. Do what we say or you're out. And no, a judge isn't going to deport you. No, the Attorney General is going to deport you. Rules for thee, not for me, right? Deportation proceedings under this section shall be summary, and the findings of the Attorney General as to matters of fact shall be conclusive. No appeals. Such persons shall not be eligible for suspension of deportation under Clause 2. So yeah, you can't even appeal or suspend your deportation. Books and materials. The Secretary is authorized to provide for interchanges between the U.S. and other countries of books and periodicals, including government publications, for the translation of such writings, and for the preparation, distribution, and interchange of other educational materials. So, Rockefeller textbooks, flood Europe with them, right? Who wrote the curriculum for 1950s schooling in Europe after World War II? It's funny how we're all taught the same lies all over the world. And you can't say that's not true because the whole world is wearing masks. Think about it. Every Western country wears checkerboards on their police officers. It's right in front of your eyes. You're telling me there's not one Western country that's like, hey, this is fake? There's not one Western country saying, hey, space might be fake? You know what I mean? They're all in on it. There is a shadow government. It's true. There is a real shadow government, but the cute people and all, they don't understand the reality of it. It's in your neighborhood. Your police chief is probably in it. Your politicians are probably in it. This cabal, right? This isn't a small group of people in Washington, D.C. No, this is the whole world. The whole world. I have yet to meet one police officer standing up to this. So am I supposed to believe every police officer in my area is just that dumb? No, they're in on it. It's ridiculous, dude. All right. Institutions. The Secretary is authorized to provide for assistance to schools, libraries, and community centers abroad, founded or sponsored by citizens of the United States and serving as demonstration centers for methods and practices employed in the United States. In assisting any such schools, however, the Secretary shall exercise no control over their educational policies, and shall in no case furnish assistance of any character which is not in keeping with the free democratic principles and the established foreign policy of the United States. Covering their butts. Title 3, Assignment of Specialist. Persons to be assigned. Oh boy. The Secretary is authorized when the government of another country is desirous of obtaining the services of a person having special scientific or other technical or professional qualifications from time to time to assign or authorize the assignment for service to or in cooperation with such government any citizen of the United States in the employ or service of the government of the United States who has such qualifications with the approval of the government agency in which such person is employed or serving. No person shall be assigned for service to or in cooperation with the government of any country unless 1. The Secretary finds that such assignment is necessary in the national interest of the U.S., or 2. Such government agrees to reimburse the United States in an amount equal to the compensation, travel expenses, and allowances payable to such persons during the period of such assignment in accordance with the provisions of Section 302. Or 3. Such government shall have made an advance of funds, property, or services as provided in Section 902. Nothing in this Act, however, shall authorize the assignment of such personnel for service relating to the organization, training, operation, development, or combat equipment of the armed forces of a foreign government. Well, that's a blatant lie. What was the 10 years that led up to Vietnam? Just sending advisors over? Yeah. So basically what they're saying is any employee of the United States government can and will be assigned by, once again, not the people, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General. Their mission will be given from the top, and they have to follow the rules. This would be abused heavily. I don't have any documents open right now, but I mean the number of spies and the number of United States government agents that were in Europe after World War II, the war never ended. Alright, status and allowances. Any citizen of the United States, while assigned for service to, or in cooperation with, another government under the authority of this Act, shall be considered, for the purpose of preserving his rights, allowances, and privileges as such, an officer or employee of the government of the United States, and of the government agency from which assigned, and he shall continue to receive compensation from that agency. Let's break that down. So they could go to anybody, any United States citizen, regardless if they're a government employee or not, and with a magic finger just poke them and say, you're a government employee now. That's what that says. And that's what they did. They did it with academia especially, right? They would send these professors after World War II over to Europe to teach, and they were actors of the United States government, right? And there's a lot more that comes with this. They put it in movies all the time. They select like a random guy off the street and then they train him, blah, blah. That's real. That is how we became a superpower, right? This is all about spying, pretty much. Spying and manipulating these weak countries after World War II. He may also receive, under such regulations as the President may prescribe, representation allowances similar to those allowed under Section 901 of the Foreign Service Act of 1946. The authorization of such allowances and other benefits and the payment thereof out of any appropriations available, therefore, shall be considered as meeting all the requirements, blah, blah, blah. So we'll write you a check. We'll write you whatever check you need. Acceptance of office under another government. Any citizen of the United States while assigned for service to or in cooperation with another government under authority of this act may, at the discretion of his government agency, with the concurrence of the Secretary, and without additional compensation therefore, accept an office under the government to which he is assigned. Oh my gosh, that's treason! Let's read that again. Any citizen of the U.S. while assigned for service to or in cooperation with another government under authority of this act may, at the discretion of his government, so America, with the concurrence of the Secretary, as long as the Secretary agrees, and without getting paid extra, may accept an office under the government to which he is assigned. Spycraft. They're literally saying you can swear an oath of allegiance to a foreign government. See how this totally contradicts everything America represents? Swearing an allegiance to a foreign government, acting as a spy, and of course, America's okay with it. The District of Criminals, DC, is okay with it, right? Do you think the American people had any idea this was happening? No. This basically made propaganda, spying, and a lot of other stuff a functioning part of our government. That's what we're reading so far. We'll see if it talks about not using propaganda against America. Haven't seen anything about that yet. Okay. And look what it says down here. Provided, however, that such acceptance of office shall in no case involve the taking of an oath of allegiance to another government. Well, how exactly does that work? How can you receive a position in a foreign government without taking an oath of allegiance to that government? That's a complete oxymoron. It's not true. Of course you have to take an oath of allegiance if you're going to be assigned to any government position anywhere in the world, right? You see, this is mockery right here. Mockery, because every single person who wrote this bill and every single person in our government has taken these oaths to Freemasonry, to other groups, right? To other globalist causes. It's mockery. Complete mockery. Covering their butts. Doesn't even make sense. Oh yeah, I'll work in your Department of Education, France. I can't take an oath. What? What? Makes no sense. Title 4. Participation by government agencies. General authority. The Secretary is authorized in carrying on any activity under the authority of this Act to utilize, with the approval of the President, the services, facilities, and personnel of other government agencies. Whenever the Secretary shall use the services, facilities, or personnel of any other government agency for activities under authority of this Act, the Secretary shall pay for such performance out of funds available to the Secretary under this Act, either in advance, by reimbursement, or direct transfer. The Secretary shall include in each report submitted to the Congress under Section 1008, a statement of the services, facilities, and personnel of other government agencies utilized in carrying on activities under the authority of this Act, showing the names and salaries of the personnel utilized or performing services utilized. Okay. What's a good example of one of these acts? Let's take a look real quick. Okay, do you think this 1948 bill had anything to do with what we'd later find out in the Church Committee 4 decades later? About spying on American citizens, about unwittingly giving American citizens psychedelic drugs and doing mind control experiments and traumatizing children and trying to figure out different methods of mind control. I feel like these they might be related, right? Okay. Disseminating information about the United States abroad. Let's read a little of that. The Secretary is authorized when he finds it appropriate to provide for the preparation and dissemination abroad of information about the United States, its people, and its policies through press, publications, radio, motion pictures, and other information, media, and through information centers and instructors abroad. Okay, so this is saying outside of the U.S., they can do whatever sort of propagandizing they want. Let's see if we can find something. Now, you've probably heard of the Berlin airlift, right? It's when the Americans brought in food and supplies, they had to fly it in to get around the communists into East Berlin, or West Berlin right here. Well, they also dropped tons of leaflets. Like this. I'm assuming this is one. That's what I looked up. Propaganda, right? And they did this in Vietnam, too. Tons of leaflets in Vietnam. With everything from cartoons to lies. I mean, guys, the stuff they showed me in one of my college courses was absolutely shocking. It was a leaflet. It was a booklet that they dropped from planes in Guatemala in 1953. If you don't know, we overthrew the democratically elected government of Guatemala in 1953. And we did that to secure U.S. Fruits, which is a huge company, right? And it was a booklet about how the rebels can sabotage the Guatemalan government. Because they're not just dropping little things down, guys. They're dropping complete fabricated stories. These are, most of the time, third world countries, right? So think of like the American lefty today, eating in a bubble or confronting people at Whole Foods, right? Think about how they totally believe in a false reality, how they're in a matrix. They've been doing this forever. That's the only reason South Vietnam fought with us, probably. It's the only reason the Guatemalan people overthrew their government or the Iranian people overthrew their government. It's through propaganda, right? Look at this one. Oh, GI so nice. It's unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable. And they do this to this day. So getting back to the Guatemala one, it had instructions of how to build bombs to take down power lines. It had a page about how to tie a rope around a sponge so you can clog a septic system. Stuff like that, guys. This is what, when the American people are asleep, this is what our country does. Look at these guys. The nice, happy UN soldier. This is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. But this is what this 1948 Act is talking about. It's authorizing all of this. Any form of propaganda can be used outside the U.S. to change the way people look at the U.S., right? Why do you think we have such a different idea of our country than the rest of the world? It's crazy. Let's see if they do this to Americans, though. In authorizing international information activities under this act, it is the sense of the Congress that the Secretary shall reduce such government information activities whenever corresponding private information dissemination is found to be adequate. Okay. Title 6, Advisory Commissions to formulate policies. I want to see if they have anything about propaganda in America. Administrative procedures, public laws. Maybe we should read here. Okay, Title 8, Administrative Procedures, the Secretary. In carrying out the purposes of this Act, the Secretary is authorized, in addition to, and not in limitation of the authority otherwise vested in him, in 1. Carrying out Title 2 of this Act, within the limitation of such appropriations as a Congress may provide, to make grants of money, services, and materials to state and local governmental institutions in the United States, to governmental institutions in other countries, and to individuals and public or private nonprofit organizations both in the U.S. and in other countries. Guys, I don't think there was ever a bill that stopped the government from using propaganda on us. I think it's the complete opposite. That's what it's looking like. Okay, 2. To furnish, sell, or rent, by contract or otherwise, educational and informational materials and equipment for dissemination to or use by peoples of foreign countries. So, taking over foreign radios, right? Good morning, Vietnam. Whenever necessary in carrying out Title V of this Act, to purchase, rent, construct, improve, maintain, and operate facilities for radio transmission and reception, including the leasing of real property both within and without the continental limits of the United States. So it says right there, like, if they're going to take over radio waves to use propaganda, they can do it inside or outside of the United States. To provide for printing and binding outside the continental limits of the United States without regard to Section 11 of the Act of March 1, 1919. 5. To employ without regard to the civil service and classification laws when such employment is provided for by the Appropriation Act. 1. Persons on a temporary basis, and 2. Aliens within the United States, but such employment of aliens shall be limited to services related to the translation and narration of colloquial speech. Okay. Number 6, to create, with the approval of the Commission on Information and the Commission on Educational Exchange, such advisory committees as the Secretary may decide to be of assistance in formulating his policies for carrying out the purposes of his act. No committee member shall be allowed any salary or other compensation for services, but he may be paid his actual transportation expenses and not to exceed $10 per day in lieu. Okay. Next we have government agencies. Let's, funds provided by other sources. Hold on, we'll find something. I'm not seeing anything about protecting the American people against propaganda, guys. Let's keep looking. This is the last page. Okay, so let's just skim through and see if everything people say on the internet's true or not. Because this looks like the complete opposite of what the internet says. Alright, we looked at that. Government agencies. Whoop. Classic, guys. Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure what everyone says on the internet is that the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 protected us from government propaganda. I don't think it did, unless it's going to say it up here. Let's read. Government agencies. In carrying on activities which further the purposes of this act, subject to approval of such activities by the Secretary, the Department and the other government agencies are authorized, 1. To place orders and make purchases and rentals of materials and equipment. This is domestic, guys. This is domestic. As long as it's approved by the Secretary, the Department and the other government agencies are authorized. So American departments, American government agencies, they can purchase and buy whatever equipment they need. 2. To make contracts, including contracts with governmental agencies, foreign or domestic, including subdivisions thereof and intergovernmental organizations of which the United States is a member, and, with respect to contracts entered into foreign countries, without regard to Section 3741 of the revised statutes. 3. Under such regulations as the Secretary may prescribe, to pay the transportation expenses and not to exceed $10 per day of citizens or subjects of other countries without regard to the standardized government travel regulations and Subsistence Act. 4. To make grants for and to pay expenses incident to training and study. Okay, maximum use of existing government property and facilities. Section 803. In carrying on activities under this act which require the utilization of government property and facilities, maximum use shall be made of existing government property and facilities. Guys, they're talking about domestic stuff. So, hypothetical, right? There's a big wave of Soviet radio, shortwave radio broadcasts that are hitting America, and people are starting to listen to them, and they're starting to expose the corruption of the United States government, right? These things really did happen, right? So, according to this, if the Secretary finds it necessary to purchase up 5, 10, 15, 20 radio stations, shortwave radio stations, and then hire all the writers, hire all the actors, hire the people with foreign languages to start pumping out anti-propaganda against the Soviets, black propaganda, that's what they're talking about doing. That's what this is permitting, right? The dissemination of information, both foreign and domestically. There's nothing in here that protects the American people at all. You have to be very careful what people tell you on YouTube. If they're not reading the thing with you, don't trust them. Absolutely not. Maybe right here it'll tell us. Maybe right here it's going to say we're protected, okay? Title 9. Funds provided by other sources. Reimbursement. The Secretary shall, when he finds it in the public interest, request and accept reimbursement from any cooperating governmental or private source in a foreign country, or from state and local governmental institutions or private sources in the United States, for all or part of the expenses of any portion of the program undertaken hereunder. The amount so received shall be covered into the Treasury and miscellaneous receipts. If any other government shall express the desire to provide funds, property, or services to be used by this government, aka our government, in whole or in part for the expenses of any specific part of the program undertaken pursuant to this act, the Secretary is authorized, when he finds it in the public interest, to accept such funds, property, or services. Unbelievable. So as long as Mr. Secretary of State thinks it's the right move, this Section 902 says that foreign actors of foreign governments, are allowed to come here and propagandize us? This can't be real. If any other government shall express the desire to provide funds, property, or services to be used by this government in whole or in part for the expenses of any specific part of the program undertaken pursuant to this act. Well, what is this act? The Information and Education Exchange Act, right? So this Section 902 is literally telling us that foreign governments may provide funds, property, and services to be used by the American government in regards to this act. Do you understand that? So the American government can invite, literally our enemies can invite, for example, hypothetically, Soviets to come to the United States to propagandize the American people. Because I am telling you guys, they all work together. They all work together, right? The Hegelian dialectic, divide and conquer, problem, reaction, solution. The people at the top control the problem, they control the reaction, and they control the desired solution. It seems real to us, but it's scripted to them. Wow, this is interesting. Okay. Funds so received may be established as a special deposit account in the Treasury of the United States to be available for the specified purpose and to be used for reimbursement of appropriations or direct expenditure, subject to the provisions of this Act. Any unexpended balance of the special deposit account and other property received under this section and no longer required for the purposes of which provided shall be returned to the government providing the funds or property. Wow, we'll even pay back what we don't use. All right. Title 10, miscellaneous. Guys, this is our last hope. If there ever was a bill that protected us from the American government using propaganda on us, it's going to be in this section. Let's read. Title 10, loyalty check on personnel. No citizen or resident of the United States, whether or not now in the employ of the government, may be employed or assigned to duties by the government under this act until such individual has been investigated by the FBI and a report thereon has been made to the Secretary of State. Provided, however, that any present employee of the government, pending the report as to such employee by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, may be employed or assigned to duties under this act for the period of 6 months from the date of its enactment. This section shall not apply in the case of any officer appointed by the President by and with the advice and consent of the Senate. Nope. This basically is just telling us that if you're going to work under this program, if you're going to work under the propaganda program, the FBI's got to clear you first. Do we have any faith in the FBI, people? How many agents did they send to Bubba Johnson's garage because of the garage poll? 12. How many agents did they send to Georgia, Arizona, or any of these places where the election was rigged? They are not on our side. All right, Section 102, Delegation of Authority. The Secretary may delegate to such officers of the government as the Secretary determines to be appropriate any of the powers conferred upon him by this Act, to the extent that he finds such delegation to be in the interest of the purposes expressed in this Act and the efficient administration of the programs undertaken pursuant to this Act. Section 103, Restricted Information. Nothing in this Act shall authorize the disclosure of any information or knowledge in any case in which such disclosure, 1, is prohibited by any other law of the U.S., or 2, is inconsistent with the security of the United States. Repeal of Act of May 25th, 1938. Ooh, this could be it. They could have repealed a former bill that protected us. Let's check it out. Section 1004A. The Act of May 25th, 1938, entitled, quote, an act authorizing the temporary detail of United States employees possessing special qualifications to governments of American republics in the Philippines and for other purposes, end quote, as amended. B. Existing executive orders and regulations pertaining to the administration of such Act of May 25, as amended, shall remain in effect until superseded by regulations prescribed under the provisions of this Act. Any reference in the Foreign Service Act of 46 or in any other law to provisions of such Act of May 25, as amended, shall be construed, blah, blah, blah. Section 105, Utilization of Private Agencies. In carrying out the provisions of this Act, it shall be the duty of the Secretary to utilize, to the maximum extent practicable, the services and facilities of private agencies, including existing American press, smoking gun. Let's read Section 105 once again. In carrying out the provisions of this act, it shall be the duty of the Secretary to utilize, to the maximum extent practicable, the services and facilities of private agencies including existing American press, publishing, radio, motion picture, and other agencies through contractual arrangements or otherwise. It is the intent of the Congress that the Secretary shall encourage participation in carrying out the purposes of this act by the maximum number of different private agencies in each field consistent with the present or potential market for their services in each country. This act never protected us. It did the complete opposite. What is the internet talking about? This section literally says that any American press, publishing, radio, motion picture, or other agencies can establish a contractual arrangement between the Secretary of State, the government, due to this act, right? This act is about information and educational exchange. This act is about propaganda. Termination pursuant to concurrent resolution of Congress, Section 106. The authority granted under this act shall terminate whenever such termination is directed. Veterans Preference Act. No provision of this act shall be construed to modify or repeal the provisions of the Veterans Preference Act. Reports to Congress. The Secretary shall submit to the Congress semi-annual reports of expenditures made and activities carried on under authority of this act, inclusive of appraisals and measurements where feasible as to the effectiveness of the several programs in each country. Regulatory provisions to apply to all international information activities and educational exchanges of State Department, Section 1009. All provisions in this act regulating the administration of international information activities and educational exchanges provided herein shall apply to all such international activities under jurisdiction of the DOS. Section 1010, this is it, last section. If any provision of this act or the application of any such provision to any person or circumstance shall be held invalid, the validity of the remainder of the act and the applicability of such provision to other persons or circumstances shall not be affected thereby. There is nothing, guys, absolutely nothing in this bill that protects us from being propagandized by our own government. In fact, the complete opposite is true. Do you see how dangerous the internet is? So we really don't even have to read the updated one, but we'll look at a little of it. So 2012, 112th Congress, second session, H.R. 5736, to amend the United States Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948 to authorize the domestic dissemination of information and material about the United States intended primarily for foreign audiences and for other purposes. Guys, they're literally just ramping up the same awful bill. There was never a bill that protected us from propaganda. Are you kidding me? Let's be realistic here, people. Do I have to show you pictures? Yes, I do. Let's look at some propaganda. Guys, can you think of a time in American history when we were protected from stuff like this? Anybody? No. We've always been propagandized by our government. The whole Smith-Mundt Act thing is a hoax. It's a PsyOp. We never had protection from propaganda, ever. We literally just read the whole bill. It said the complete opposite. So now, this one passed under Obama. Let's read a little. To amend the United States Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948 to authorize the domestic dissemination of information and material about the United States intended primarily for foreign audiences and for other purposes. So basically, that's just saying that whatever propaganda we were using overseas or in other countries can be used against the American people too. So if you're trying to convince the whole globe to go in a certain direction, doesn't that make sense? Use the same propaganda for everybody, because that's the plan, is to make everybody the same. Unbelievable, guys. Yeah, we've never been protected from propaganda. Are you kidding me? That doesn't even make sense. Propaganda is protected under freedom of speech. So you can't have it both ways, guys. That's why God gave us brains and discernment and intelligence. Okay. Let's read a little. Dissemination abroad of information about the United States. We don't have to read that. Let's see if they say anything about domestic. Okay, clarification on domestic distribution of program material. I'll say it a million times. The original act did not protect us from propaganda. It encouraged propaganda. Let's read that last part one more time, guys, before we read the new one. Give me a second. Section 105 of the 1005 of the 1948 Information and Educational Exchange Act. Listen, in carrying out the provision of this act, it shall be the duty of the Secretary to utilize, to the maximum extent practicable, the services and facilities of private agencies, including existing American press, publishing, radio, motion picture, and other agencies. It's not saying that the government can. It's saying that the government should utilize to the maximum extent American press. So I don't know where this idea comes from that some bill in 1948 protected us. Let's read the modern one. In general, no funds authorized to be appropriated to the Department of State or the Broadcasting Board of Governors shall be used to influence public opinion in the United States. This section shall apply only to programs carried out pursuant to the United States Information and Educational Exchange Act. What is that saying, guys? They're saying, no, the government can't use propaganda against us unless it's through the 1948 Act. It's ridiculous, dude. Pretty sure that's what it's saying. This section shall apply only to programs carried out pursuant to the United States Information and Educational Exchange Act. Well, if we go back to that act, it says that the Secretary may utilize to the maximum extent all forms of American press, publishing, radio, and motion picture. So, I mean... Okay. Let's keep reading. The United States International Broadcasting Act of 94, the Radio Broadcasting to Cuba Act, and the Television Broadcasting to Cuba Act. This section shall not prohibit or delay the Department of State or the Broadcasting Board of Governors from providing information about its operations, policies, programs, and program material, or making such available to the media, public, or Congress in accordance with other applicable law. Just reinforcing the same thing. They can tell us whatever lies they want. Nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit the Department of State or the Broadcasting Board of Governors from engaging in any medium or form of communication, either directly or indirectly, because a United States domestic audience is or may be thereby exposed to program material, or based on a presumption of such exposure. There you go. Nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit the Department of the State or the Broadcasting Board of Governors from engaging in any medium or form of communication, either directly or indirectly, because a United States domestic audience is or may be thereby exposed to program material. So it's saying they can do whatever they want. Such material may be made available within the United States and disseminated when appropriate pursuant to Sections 502 and 1005 of the United States Information and Educational Exchange Act. What's Section 105, ladies and gentlemen? I hope you've held on this long to this episode. Boom. When appropriate, pursuant to Sections 1005 of the United States Information Education Exchange Act, they are allowed to use any program in any medium against us as long as it falls under this. And this is Section 105, which basically utilizes to the maximum extent all American press, publishing, radio, and motion pictures to be used domestically. So there was never a time when propaganda was not allowed to be used against us. That is a complete myth. Complete myth. Application. The provisions of this section shall apply only to the Department of State and the Broadcasting Board of Governors and to no other department or agency. There you go, guys. There you go. So in 1948, they passed a bill after World War II that allowed them to use propaganda, not just in foreign countries, but on American soil. And in 2012, they reiterated that by saying, pretty much just authorizing America to use the exact same propaganda they're using overseas on the American people. So when these people in their ivory towers in the halls of the Pentagon come up with a program, look up the definition of program, right? Say they come up with a program for the Middle East. Maybe they're going to drop a bunch of leaflets in Iraq that say Saddam Hussein has, weapons of chemical destruction or whatever, right? This 2012 Act allows them to use that same propaganda against us. Pretty sure that's what it's saying. And they were doing that anyway. They were doing that anyway because this allowed them to in the first place, the 1948 bill, right? So as they rebuilt Europe and spread all sorts of lies about everything from science, health, to religion, to politics, they spread the same lies to us, right? Why do you think the whole world has fallen for the globe deception? Why do you think the whole world Why do you think every government uses the same symbols, right? Why do you think everybody in the world today is wearing a mask? Why is there not one place in the world where people know the truth? It's because of bills like this and laws like this. And you know what? It's not even the people's fault, because the whole entire world was destroyed by World War II. This is trauma-induced mind control. Nobody was paying attention to bills. Are you kidding me? They were trying to feed their families and rebuild their homes. So, using warfare, they pass all this stuff under the carpet, right? Unbelievable. And a couple years later, Joseph McCarthy would come out and say, oh my gosh, we've been infiltrated by communists. This is awful. Yeah, we were screwed all the ways back then. And then what did they teach me about Joseph McCarthy? They taught me Joseph McCarthy was the Antichrist, the most evil person in the world, right? Couldn't be farther from the truth. The man's an American hero. He's a patriot. He stood up when everybody else went along with the crowd. He bore the cross. This man bore a cross, one of the heaviest crosses in American history. It's so heavy that to this day teachers still lie about what he was doing. He was exposing a global conspiracy, just like Smedley Butler was. They're exposing the infiltration of America in these plans to globalize the world, like in the Mazzini-Albert Pike letter. Right? Joseph McCarthy was a hero. Smedley Butler was a hero. The National Educators Association is a communist front. They're all liars. We never had protection against propaganda. Don't fall for that. We read the whole thing. No protection against propaganda. Alright guys, thank you very much. Hope you have a great Sunday. I'll definitely be back with something else for you today. I'm thinking about reading The Invisible Rainbow. We'll do a chapter for, each episode will be a chapter. It'll be like an audiobook for you guys, but I'll stop and we'll talk about stuff. So I'll do that later. God bless. If you want to tune in to Calvary Baptist Church, should be starting around right now. They're on YouTube. Calvary Baptist Church, Sanford, Maine, live stream. And of course, today around 4:30, head to the main mall. We're going to storm the main mall. Bring everybody you can. I'm going to be there at 4:30, a little early. Actually, I'd be really surprised if any of you are still watching at this point, but let me just show you where we're going to meet. I believe this is where we're going to meet. This is where we met last time. Let me just pull up Google Earth here. Yeah, guys, I hope you share this video, because I don't know why people think there was a 1948 bill that protected us from... No. See, what these people did was they only read the 2012 bill, right? Which makes it sound like we used to have protections, but no, we didn't, dude. That's ridiculous. You kidding me? Our government's controlled by Satanists. Okay, so here's the main mall. This is 95, northbound, right? This is the main mall. So we usually meet right here. This area. This would be the jewelry store, one of these two. This is Best Buy right here. Right, Best Buy. I believe this is Sears. Yeah, so we meet outside of Sears. That's where I'm going to be, at least. Looking forward to seeing you guys there. And look at these glass pyramids, right? Did they need to make a glass pyramid? Nope. Interesting. Alright guys, I'll see you in another video. If not, I'll see you around 4:30, 5 o'clock, right here outside of Sears at the main mall. God bless.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940-41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.